that's a much different story, right? Because there's been a lot of discourse about this lately, especially after Disney announced it would be doing a live-action remake of Moana, with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson announcing it in a video yesterday suggesting he would reprise his role, saying it's all in early stages. In a response, people kind of seem to just be fed up with the remakes, right? They've done live-action Jungle Book, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Lion King, we're getting a live-action of The Little Mermaid. But specifically in this case, people seem to be annoyed because it's not even been 10 years. The movie came out in 2016, with some arguing this isn't even a way to update something that's outdated or introduce it to a new generation. It's just making the same film they already made again for money. We saw this frustrations double the same day because it was announced that Warner Bros. Is actually working on potentially rebooting the Harry Potter books into a TV series, right? Not some kind of spin-off, but just rather another book adaptation where each book would be a season of television, with people here seemingly mad for several reasons. Right? Some say, how absurd, how unasked for, how typical of this we must capitalize on existing IP whether the audience wants it or not moment, and we're trapped in a creative existential death cycle, with others saying they won't support the show because of J.K. Rowling. But even there, you had plenty of people saying the controversies around J.K. Rowling aside, there's just no way your average Harry Potter obsessed person will care about this without the original cast, and saying that the magic of those movies just can't be replicated. And all of this happening as we learned this morning that there is potentially a Shrek 5 in the works. Though there, I would say, off the heels of the Puss in Boots movie, which is, it's better than it has any right to be. Fun story, fun times, one of the best villains in a movie. So I will say there, I'm a little more open. Especially because, yes, it is still a sequel, it's a continuation, but it's not just another reboot. And then in political news, we've got massive news out of Wisconsin. I mean, this is a huge political shakeup. Because yesterday, a Supreme Court seat was up for grabs and it was scored by liberal Janet Protasiewicz. And her victory will likely mean that for the first time in 15 years, the state's highest court will swing to the left. Right, so the race was between Protasiewicz and her opponent, Dan Kelly, and it was intense, with it becoming the most expensive state Supreme Court race in U.S. history. And when you consider what was on the line, that makes sense. Right, Wisconsin has been a historical swing state, and that court is no different. But the legislature, not so flexible, with Republicans steadily winning majorities for years now, and Democrats accusing them of gerrymandering to stay in power. With that, along with the abortion ban at the center of this race, and both sides seeing this victory as a chance to cement the ban or overturn it. And what's particularly interesting is that we didn't have to guess what Protasiewicz would rule like we did with U.S. Supreme Court justices, where they generally at least pretend to be impartial when trying to get the spot, but in Wisconsin's case, the candidates were open about many of their positions. And so for many issues such as abortion, we know that Protasiewicz is firmly and openly on the side of a woman's right to choose, and this victory has been hailed by Democratic strategists as a possible shift in state politics, although we know how quickly public sentiment can change by the time the 2024 elections roll around. But either way, Protasiewicz spoke to her supporters after her victory and made jabs at Kelly, who tried to overturn the 2020 election results in the state by saying, "Too many have tried to overturn the will of the people. Today's results show that Wisconsinites believe in democracy and the democratic process." While Kelly, for his part, I think the term was a salty bitch about his loss, describing his opponent's campaign as the mostly deeply deceitful, dishonorable, despicable campaign I've ever seen run for the courts, and adding,
"The people of Wisconsin have chosen the rule of Janet. Now, I respect that decision because it is theirs to make. I wish that in a circumstance like this, I would be able to concede to a worthy opponent, but I do not have a worthy opponent to which I can concede."
But all in all, a massive win for the left here in what's been called the most important election of 2023. And then Chicago's got a brand new mayor, and depending on your politics, he is either the resurrection or the destruction of this city. Right, for the past 4 years, Chicagoans have had Lori Lightfoot as their mayor, and when the first round of voting wrapped up back in February, they clearly had had enough of her. I mean, pretty damn rough to be the incumbent and then there be a runoff election, but you didn't even qualify. With her falling into third place, making her the city's first mayor to lose re-election in 4 decades. And the reason many believe she lost is that the election was largely seen as a referendum on crime. Right, murders in 2021 spiked to the highest levels on record in 25 years, and there were almost 800 homicides and over 3,500 shooting incidents. But with Lightfoot out of the running, Chicago has faced a choice in the runoff between two radically different philosophies towards solving crime. Right, you had the frontrunner, Paul Vallis, a former school administrator and pro-police moderate Democrat. Then on his heels, you had Brandon Johnson, an activist, teachers union member, and Cook County commissioner, who's a progressive Democrat who has endorsements from people like Bernie Sanders and Liz Warren. And we saw him swiftly rising the ranks, polling in 5th place, and then leaping ahead into 2nd. And that was in no small part because he enjoyed the backing of several city unions, including the Chicago Teachers Union and the Service Employees International Union. Meanwhile, you had Vallis endorsed by the likes of the city's police and firefighter unions, and unsurprisingly, his solution to crime was simple: increase funding for law enforcement. Where he wants to hire hundreds more police officers and generally take a tough-on-crime approach to the issue. And he absolutely hammered Johnson with attack ads, highlighting his past comments in support of defund the police, pouring twice as much money as his rival into TV. Though, to be fair to Johnson, he has since backed off of the defund the police police mindset, saying that he wouldn't cut the police budget by a penny, rather saying he would promote 200 more detectives and redirect funds towards social workers who can respond to 911 calls or mental health crises. And at the center of his platform is this idea that you need to attack the deep roots of crime and poverty in crumbling communities, saying he wants to invest in education, affordable housing, public transportation, mental health treatments, and jobs, seeking to boost youth employment in particular, and proposing to pay for all this by raising $800 million in taxes on wealthy individuals, businesses, and real estate. But Vallis, on the other hand, had criticized the plan, claiming that Chicagoans are already drowning in property taxes, which he promised to cap, also arguing that Johnson just doesn't have the necessary experience to run a city, and their debate over this got pretty heated.
The fact that he's being dismissive of a black man who taught for 4 years in Chicago public schools is you got to stop doing that, Paul. You just do.
Criticizing his leadership ability and his lack of management competency. That's what I'm questioning, not his 4 years as a teacher. When he retires, he'll actually...
Then don't bring it up.
Well, he'll actually retire with a teacher pension, despite the fact that he's only been a teacher for 4 years.
And we're going to retire you in 3 days.
Right, so the heart of Johnson's critique is the accusation that his rival is just a Republican in disguise, pointing out how he's been backed by donors who also supported GOP candidates and was endorsed by the Chamber of Commerce. Also harping on the police union support, which bit Vallis in the ass when the union's president warned that 1,000 cops would resign and there would be blood in the streets if Johnson won the election. And there was even more weight to the critique when a 2009 interview surfaced in which Vallis said,
You think of yourself as a Republican?
I'm more of a Republican than Democrat now.
So with all of that, right, the stage set, hundreds of thousands of voters went to the polls to decide what kind of Chicago they wanted to see, and the results came in last night, with Johnson narrowly taking the lead by just 1 point and securing himself the office and thanking his city to thunderous applause.
And so today, we celebrate the revival and the resurrection of the city of Chicago. It is time for Chicago to come alive. Come alive, Chicago.
And so now we have to wait to see whether this race, which was seen as a battle between the two opposing wings of the Democratic Party, signals a shift in local and state politics across the country. With this, while I'd love to know everyone's thoughts, specifically if you live in or around Chicago, what are your thoughts on the results that we're seeing now? And then I want to tell you more about today's sponsor, Seed, and their clinically and scientifically backed DS-01 Daily Symbiotic. As you know, I've been taking Seed's DS-01 for about a year now, and my commitment to better gut health remains strong. And with Seed, it's easy because their probiotic strain research and clinical trial successes are next level. Right, thanks to their ViaCap delivery technology, unique capsule and capsule design, Seed's DS-01 requires no refrigeration, and probiotic strains actually make it to your colon alive with 100% survivability. But it also goes beyond benefits like gut health, like healthy regularity, ease bloating, heart health, skin health, and more. It can also be easy to get lost in all the misinformation surrounding probiotics these days. Right? I mean, probiotics are a science. It's important they're developed, manufactured, and vetted with scientific rigor and precision. And from experience, I can say Seed's DS-01 Daily Symbiotic is the real deal. So give it a try. In your first month, you'll receive this 30-day supply, a refillable glass jar, and travel vial. And after that, they send sustainably packaged monthly refills. And you can get 25% off your first month's supply of Seed's DS-01 plus free shipping. Just go to seed.com/DeFranco and use code DeFranco at checkout. And then in international news, let's talk about foreign workers in the UK. So a survey found that only 29% of Brits said the priority over jobs should go to locals last year compared to 65% back in 2009. Except those workers aren't always treated so well once they get there. Human rights groups have consistently warned that 6-month seasonal visas open up workers to exploitation, not least because regulations aren't adequately enforced. There's nearly 35,000 migrant workers coming to the UK on those visas last year. And you've got a report from Vice talking to more than 20 such people working at 9 farms across their country, saying their already meager wages have been stolen by employers. With one woman who worked 6 hours a day, 6 days a week, saying she received under £2,000 for 2 months of work, 1,000 less than she said that she was owed. And several more workers from EU plants, one of the UK's largest producers of strawberry and raspberry plants, said that the hours on their pay slips were inaccurate, and saying that when they tried to check how their hours were being reported by the field supervisor, they were just yelled at. With others also claiming they had to buy their own gloves and boots, as well as electric heaters to warm their caravans during winter, despite rules saying that workers shouldn't have to purchase the equipment needed to do their jobs. Not to mention the legal deduction of rent and electricity from their pay. And since Brexit, the UK's economy has become more and more dependent on migrant laborers to fill vacancies in sectors including healthcare, warehousing, and construction. So net migration to the UK rose to a record high of 500,000 last year, with the government steadily increasing the number of visas issued since 2019, looking to dish out as many as 55,000 this year, which is also why the Conservative government there has faced criticism from many in its own base that it's betrayed the promise made to them in the Brexit referendum, a vote made in large part to stem immigration. And then Italian culture is under threat from the English language. At least, that is according to Italy's Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni. We've talked about her before. She's the right-wing politician whose Brother of Italy party, which is iconography and many members with distant roots in the fascist party, won the election last year. Well, she has now proposed a law that would ban the use of foreign words in official communications, penalizing those who use such words with a $100,000 fine, and specifically targeting English, which the proposal proposal claims has dramatically increased in usage over the past 20 years, saying that among the 800,000 or so words in the typical Italian dictionary, there are some 9,000 anglicisms. And adding, this is demeaning to the Italian language, especially because the UK is no longer in the European Union. So to combat this, the bill requires all office holders in public administration to have, quote, written and oral knowledge and mastery of the Italian language, as well as prohibiting the use of English in official documents